Hello, this is Naomi Jiang. Welcome back to the New Horizon podcast. In today's Exploring the Indigenous History series, we will continue to discuss Indigenous history through movies. Together, we will be watching the 2017 film called Indian Horse, with the direction of Stephen S. Campolani. This compelling movie depicts the sometimes endurous experience of the indigenous people today, especially from the life of the movie's hero, Saul Indian Horse. Now, a closer look at the indigenous leitmotif present in this story will be taken. Before we begin today's discussion on indigenous history and its portrayal in film, I would like to acknowledge that I'm recording this from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. It is an honor to live and work on this land, and it is that spirit of respect that we dive into our topic today. Indian Horse is one of those films that captures the truth hidden from general public and the blindness of society as indigenous children were dealt with Canadian residential school system. On the simplicity level, the plot is based on the theme of survival, the attainment of personal identity in the opposition of the force which seeks to oppress. The novel is based on the protagonist, Saul Indian Horse, an Ojibwe boy who became a victim of Canada's residential school system, whereby he was taken from his family to be molded into a submissive individual. Here, the protagonist lost his ability to speak and write, his culture, his name, and has adopted the Western civilization's mode of living. The residential school were facilities whose main goal were to eliminate indigenous culture. Consequently, Saul's story represents many indigenous people lost on an individual and communal level. In the residential school, hockey becomes Saul's refuge, a sport strongly associated with white people. Hockey also symbolically becomes the kind of escape and entrapment for Saul. The player on ice possesses a level of brilliance like no other, a strength which can also provoke him for gross and racially driven arrogance. Unfortunately, being an illegitimate child, Saul consistently received cues that he's an outcast, although he's a talented musician. Here's a poignant scene where Saul asks his friend, "Do they hate me?" His friend responds, "They don't hate you, Saul. They just think it is their game." This line encapsulates the systematic racism and exclusion that Saul faces. The story of Saul is one of the survivor. Despite this, he continues with racism every time on ice, quitting hockey but returning to game later in life. Playing this game is not about entertainment alone. It is about regaining his manhood and regaining the respect of other person. Finally, the ring is a place where it can be considered as a symbol of hope for the main character and return to his past. God's Lake represents one of the most profound motifs of the film, as at this location, Saul finally gets pure and enlightened. This lake has been depicted as an American paradise that does not offer any room for the suffering and discrimination that are faced in the real world. That is where Saul could communicate with his identity and ponder his aspiration apart from adversities that he has to confront. The beauty and the sacredness of God's lake very distinctively convey the idea of invincibility of the indigenous people's spirit. We will be right back after a quick break. This podcast is sponsored by New Hope, the National Center of Truth and Reconciliation, dedicated to preserving the history of residential schools in Canada. However, the message of Saul's story does not end with the movie. There are reproductions of the story that indigenous people in Canada have shared with each other. These were the horrific acts committed by the Canadian government, and the country has begun to apologize and compensate for the damage caused. These involve written and verbal sorry, remorse, monetary settlements, an attempt to enhance quality of life of indigenous people. Nonetheless, ending of all discrimination and prejudice, as well as attaining truth acceptance for blacks, is still a work in progress. Therefore, Indian Horse is a book that does not only reveal the truth, but also helps in addressing present issues. It is an invitation to acknowledge the culture of indigenous populations and appreciate their history. Realizing their past and the wrongs done to them through social injustice, society change for the better. Before ending today's show, it is important to always appreciate the diversity and multiculturalism are source of life's beauty. Appreciation of their history and culture, as well as embracing each other, bring hope for having a better tomorrow. All in all, it is pretty clear that Indian Horse is a vivid, rather inspiring story of the indigenous population's endurance, as well as inspiring call to appreciate their roots. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Indian Horse. If you haven't seen the film yet, I highly recommend it. It is a story that will stay with you long after credits roll. It is Naomi Jiang signing off. Until next time, let's keep exploring history together.